Hello everyone, my name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute. Thanks for joining me for Preston's Ponderings. We're involved in a study of Matthew 16:27 and 28, where Jesus said, "The Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father with his angels, and shall reward every man according to his works. Verily, I say unto you, there are some standing here which shall not taste of death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Well, as promised, I want to spend a little bit of time in this segment addressing some of the objections that have been lodged. Certainly not all of them. I'll keep on addressing some as we go along. But two detractors lodged two different, although somewhat similar objections. One objector says, well, Mr. Preston separates Matthew 16:27 and 28 from the context of Matthew 16. The other objector says, well, Mr. Preston, all that he has done is do comparative studies. He has not actually done exegesis of the text. Well, let's examine those objections, shall we? The first objection is that I separate Matthew 16:27 and 28 from the context. On the contrary, I have demonstrated that the coming of the Lord in judgment of verse 27 is tied grammatically with the previous verses and Jesus' prediction of his death and the death and the suffering of his disciples. In other words, verse 27 was Jesus' coming in vindication of his own suffering and that of his disciples. When did Jesus himself say that he was going to judge all of the blood of all the righteous that had been shed upon the earth, including that of his disciples and thus himself? Well, in Matthew 23:29 and following, Jesus said all of the blood of all of the righteous shed on the earth, all the way back to Abel, was going to be judged and avenged in his generation. Now, the fact that verse 27 begins with the Greek particle, the connective particle gar, ties it inextricably and inseparably with the prediction of Jesus' suffering and that of his disciples. That's not separating these verses from the context. It is establishing these verses as the context of Matthew 16. Likewise, I have demonstrated repeatedly that the judgment of Matthew 16:27 is the judgment foretold in Isaiah chapter 40, 10 and 11. I have demonstrated that that coming was the coming foretold by the voice crying in the wilderness, make straight the paths of the Lord. That was John the Baptizer. But that judgment was, when John spoke, that judgment was about to take place. It was imminent. But you see, that ties in with verse 27 or verse 28 as occurring in that generation. Furthermore, I have established that the coming of the Lord in judgment and reward is the coming of the Lord for the time of the wedding foretold by Isaiah chapter 62. But the time of the wedding, according to Jesus himself, would be at the time of the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70 in Matthew chapter 22. Now, what I've done in these texts is to demonstrate that the context of Matthew 16:27 and 28, the prophetic context, is in fact the impending judgment of Jerusalem in AD 70. That addresses the argument or the objection that all I've done is comparative studies, not exegesis. Now, let me make this observation. To establish, by comparative studies, the proper historical, the proper prophetic context of Matthew 16:27 and 28, by taking note of the prophecies that lie behind Matthew 16:27, 28, is not some kind of inappropriate comparative study. It is, in fact, using what the reformers appeal to as analogia scriptura. Now, let me illustrate this. Is it wrong when Jesus said the Son of Man will go up to Jerusalem, there be betrayed, crucified, killed, raised again the third day? Is it inappropriate comparative study to go back to Isaiah chapter 53, which predicted Jesus' suffering? No, that is establishing the exegetical context of Matthew 16:21 and following. And thus to object to Don Preston's analysis of Matthew 16:27, because I have gone to Isaiah 40, Isaiah 62, and Daniel chapter 7, and by the way, we could have gone to many other texts, and say, well, Preston has not done exegesis, he's done comparative study, is a misguided objection. What I have done is to set the proper context in order to properly exegete. But let's look at the objection a little more, shall we? By doing this comparative study and showing that Jesus was predicting his coming of the Son of Man in judgment of the persecutors to establish the kingdom in that generation, I have shown from Daniel chapter 7 that it had to have been fulfilled in the days of the Roman Empire. Did either one of my objectors take note of the prophetic source of Isaiah 40, Isaiah 62, and Daniel chapter 7? Not one word. Furthermore, I have taken note, once again, of the little Greek term, amin lego humin, of Matthew 16:28, which inextricably, irrefutably ties verse 28 with verse 27. Not some far off saying, but as I have shown, amin lego humin never breaks a subject. It never introduces a new subject. Now, folks, this is exegesis of the best sort. By honoring the grammatical use of amin lego humin and honoring the fact that amin lego humin always calls attention to what is about to be said, that will emphasize something that has just been said, that is proper exegesis, and there is no way to refute that. So what we have seen is my objectors say that I divide Matthew 16:27 and 28 from the context. No, I set it firmly in the context because Jesus coming in judgment of Matthew 16:27 is the coming in his kingdom, as I have demonstrated irrefutably from Matthew 25:31 and following. When the Son of Man comes with his angels, then shall he sit on the throne of his glory. That establishes the parallel, that establishes the proper identity, that establishes the unity of Matthew 16:27 and 28 as one event that was to take place in the lifetime of that first century audience. These comparative studies are in fact the proper use of analogia scriptura. They do in fact establish the proper basis for exegesis. It is not eisegesis. So I submit to you that those who have objected to my presentation so far are in fact the ones who would seek to divide Matthew 16:27 and 28. They divide verse 27 from verse 28 by 2,000 years. Where's the unity of that? Where's the connection? They are the ones separating verse 27 from Jesus' suffering and that of his disciples in verses 21 to 24. Where's the unity of the context in that? They are the ones who are ignoring the prophetic background and the prophetic source and the prophetic context of Matthew 16:27 and 28. That was to be the coming of the Lord in judgment at the end of Old Covenant Israel's age and confined positively to the days of Rome. You know what? The objectors' objections fail. They are the ones separating Matthew 16:27 and 28 from context. They are the ones not honoring the proper prophetic context for proper exegesis of Matthew 16:27 and 28. Well, hey, we'll have more to say about some of the objections that have been lodged against Preston's Ponderings in later sessions. In the meantime, thanks for joining me for Preston's Ponderings, and we'll see you on the flip side.